Howdy, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. My name is Krushinator.
And I'm Stoic, and at long last, this is episode 10 of the Community Chat Show.
Your one-stop shop for all the latest in the CCS community.
With us today is the Krushinator, captain and
That's
DPS
me.
player for Kael'thas Can't Spell, or CCS 3. Welcome to the show, Krushinator. We're glad you're here. Tell us about yourself.
Well, like you said, I am the Krushinator. I currently the head caster for NGS, captain of Kael'thas Can't Spell. This is my second season playing, my third season with the league. Took a season off to do some focusing on casting, and that paid off quite a bit in terms of position. But yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, before all the NGS stuff, I was a CCS community member. So I'm glad to be on the show. I'm glad to be talking to you guys today.
We are glad you're here, holding it down, representing CCS at the highest level of NGS. You're the head caster, right? You were interim head caster. Are you now official head caster, no interim?
I am officially head caster. I'm in the spot. It's mine until I give it up.
So one of my goals for tonight is I want to know how you went from like joining the league in season 9 to then in season 10 interim head caster. So within less than a year, you flew onto the scene, swept everyone off their feet, stole their hearts, and took head caster slots. So hopefully we'll be able to figure this out, and everyone else can replicate that when they force Crush to retire and take his spot. Let's start though, like as way back as we can get. HOTS. How'd you get into HOTS at the very beginning of your time?
All right, so we're talking about 2015, 2016. I started to hear about Heroes of the Storm. It was in beta. I think I first heard about it through Garrett Weinzierl when I was listening to The Angry Chicken, which is a Heroes of the Storm podcast, or a Hearthstone podcast. And he mentioned he was starting a new podcast called Into the Nexus about Heroes of the Storm. It's a MOBA. It's like League or Dota. Now, all I'd heard about MOBAs then was MOBA's bad. MOBA's hard and toxic, and there's mean folks. I was like, whoa. Well, I don't know if I want to play. I'm sure interested in hearing about it. A Blizzard one sounds cool. Maybe that'll be interesting. So I started listening to the podcast, and I started catching a couple streams. There were, the streamers of the time playing the game, and it was interesting, but I still wasn't playing. I was very much on the outside, consuming HOTS through these alternate means. And when the game finally released for the first time, went out of beta, is when I decided to give it a shot personally. So that's kind of how I started playing all those years ago. But I still think my primary connection to Heroes of the Storm is not playing the game. Like, aside from the stint after HGC, almost every single day I was consuming HOTS in some way that wasn't playing the game. I was listening to it, podcasts about it. Like, back in its heyday, there might have been 5 active Heroes of the Storm podcasts. I listened to all of them. I watched streamers play it. I did theory crafting. I eventually followed the esports. And that's kind of been my primary connection to Heroes until really this last year and a half, when I started to play it more seriously.
What would you say would be like the kind of ratio? You said you kind of consumed content more than played it yourself. Is it like a 70-30 or like an 80-20?
Well, I would consume some kind of Heroes content every single day. And I'd probably, given the amount of time I'd actually play the game, probably like an 80-20 split for a very long time. Like, I'd play a couple times a week, get a few games in an evening, maybe check out the Brawl, maybe check out Quick Match for some of the heroes that I really wanted to play. But that was not every day by any means. But the listening and the watching, that was definitely every day.
I forgot about the checking out the Brawl. Like, that's what I do that in Hearthstone, and it like makes me every week I log in to make sure I get the Brawl pack. I forgot that. I used to do the same thing in HOTS. Like, I would go check out the Brawl every week.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we don't really have anymore since it's just ARAM. And that's probably for the best, given, the last time I tried to participate in something that wasn't ARAM. I remember specifically it was the Stitches Pull Party, which was one of my favorite non-ARAM brawl things to do. And I went in there and it was me against one other person with 4 other AIs per team. And I was like, I think this is over. I think the brawl experiment might be done.
Oh no.
Yeah. So what is it? Because I know that, like myself included, when I consume HOTS content, it's kind of to kind of get ideas for when I play myself, right? Looking at comps at work and stuff. But you seem to kind of consume significantly more than you played. What was it that really drew you to consuming content for this game?
I think mainly that was just sort of the way I interacted with games at the time. Like for the longest time, the only game I played was World of Warcraft. Like I started playing back in 2007, and from, very serious raider down to casual player, that was the game that like I played all the time. But later in sort of the life cycle of me playing WoW was when I started to check out other games. I started to see Hearthstone. I would see, I tried Diablo here and there, Overwatch. Things started to come out that would pull my interest before I went back into World of Warcraft. And WoW as a game is very easy to play while consuming other content. So podcasts, streams, all sorts of stuff. It was very easy to listen to those while just dirtling around in WoW doing whatever. So that was just my first contact with so many other games was through audio media.
Interesting. Wait, you mentioned before there were you said 5 HOTS podcasts. Is that a lot or a little? Like, I'm not a big podcast guy. Like, you're like, when I think about podcasts,
at the
I think
time,
about Crush.
like to have that many active, successful podcasts at the same time about basically the same thing was a lot. Like World of Warcraft probably had more, but just the way the game was, each podcast was about something a little bit different. There might have been one that was more interview based, one that was like news of the week. There was raid type stuff with guides. There was stuff about professions. So there was all these sort of things within World of Warcraft you could make a podcast about where you're not stepping on each other's toes.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Heroes of the Storm, there's not really that much you can differentiate yourself from other shows. I mean, there was the heavy esports podcast and there was the home game podcast, and that was really all you could differentiate. But at its peak back in like 2016, 2017, I'm trying to remember them all. There's Lords of the Storm, Stormcast, Into the Nexus. We've got Q for Fun that's still rolling right now. Core, back before it switched away from HOTS specifically and became a general game podcast, that was 100% HOTS content. And it's just a lot of big name podcasters that are still working in other spaces were in on this game. And there was really nothing else like that. Like there's maybe a Diablo podcast that ran through that whole time. There's a couple, like maybe 1 or 2 StarCraft podcasts that survived that space. I never really got that much into Overwatch to see if there was podcasts in that arena. Maybe there are or aren't, but I hadn't heard very much about them. But in terms of podcasts, Heroes of the Storm, like, it just exploded, and we're talking like 100+ episode podcasts, all surviving at the same time. It was really incredible.
What was making, like, what prevented the cannibalism if they were largely about the same thing? Like, Here's the Storm, there's a lot going on, but it's not as expansive as WoW. What prevented them from, like, killing each other?
I think it was partly just the community that Heroes of the Storm has tended to cultivate. Like, the same people all listen to those shows. It's not like people went like, oh, I listen to this Heroes of the Storm podcast because I like them. Every person I came across listened to all of them, just like I did. They were just enthralled to be a part, and they were hanging out with those guys, and everyone's hanging out with each other. The podcasts are in each other's chats all the time. So it was like one giant piece of content. People weren't choosing favorites. They were just consuming all of it. It was crazy.
Do you think there's any parallels between that and kind of it kind of, the way you describe it kind of makes me think of like the current state of HOTS with like there's kind of like big orgs like CCS and Region and Phoenix Rising. Like, do you feel like that's kind of, we're kind of in a similar boat now where it's kind of more grassroots, but we're all just kind of playing the same game?
It's something that's honestly I feel been unique about Heroes of the Storm over time is that the organizations that came and ones that stayed are here with there's a level of passion for just the game and the longevity of the community itself that I feel like other games don't have. Like CCS, Regen, Phoenix Rising, all these different organizations that feel like they should be competing to supplant each other. We're just kind of happy to be coexisting in the same space. We don't like shudder at the thought of mentioning each other. We're all just in the same zone. Like, yeah, we're all part of Heroes of the Storm. Come on in. You want to join one or the other? It's fine. We're all part of the same group. And it's really, I think, what makes this game special. Like of course, during, the heyday of esports, there's some of the bigger orgs dipped their toe in and then went out, and some came and left. But the ones that stuck around were just like, yeah, we're not trying to become the biggest and baddest and monopolize the space. We're just here to be a part of things. And I think that's where we find ourselves with our amateur and our semi-pro organizations.
Doing some analytics for our podcast, we've recognized we have a lot of game developers and community managers who are watching the show. Not actually, but if they were to be watching this, what's the secret? Like, what did HOTS do, or what did the community do, from your perspective, to create this kind of uplifting rather than competing community?
It's a little bit tragic, I think, but we knew right from the very start that it was going to be an uphill battle in the MOBA space. Like right from the fact that like we're a hero brawler, we're trying to be different, we're trying to compete with the big dogs. We knew from the start that it was going to be uphill to try to exist in the MOBA space with League of Legends and Dota 2. So there was kind of, I feel like right from the beginning there was kind of a unifying, it's not an enemy, but it's like a reason to be like, we can't be fighting with each other to be the biggest dogs in the smallest pond. Like we've got to come up as a group if we just to exist at all as a game. Because the immediate response from the League of Legends community, from the Dota 2 community, was dismissive. Right at the start. It wasn't, oh, there's a new game, let me go check it out. It's just like, baby game for babies, get out of our space. And we were just like, what? Why? We're just playing a game. And I think that atmosphere that Heroes of the Storm was born into helped create this now very positive and very inclusive community that we have.
Yeah, that is a really interesting thing to think about. Like in other communities, there isn't as much, like the fighting game for community, for example, right? There's a lot of overlap between games like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, right? People who enjoy one usually enjoy multiple, but in MOBAs it's very territorial, right? If you are a HOTS player and I'm a League player, we can't be friends, right?
Yeah, it's like it's very tribal, and that like you have to be playing the good game, the best game, and you can't play both, and you can't move over, otherwise you're a traitor. And it's just, I don't know if it's something about the way that MOBAs are, if it was something about the tribalism around League and Dota trying to come up as the premier MOBA esport that created that environment. But yeah, I mean, it created a very sort of hostile space in the general gaming community for Heroes of the Storm trying to come in and just exist as a game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think that like this? So let's say Heroes of the Storm has Blizzard behind it, going for it, right? It has pulling on Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, incredibly popular franchises. I mean, do you think that like games like Paladins or Smite or Heroes of Newerth that exist but like never reached that full scene? I mean, do you think they were kind of hampered by this MOBA exclusivity that you were describing?
So I think Blizzard had a huge leg up in having a launcher where people already existed and could see the game and just click on it and it was free. So not having to download, I mean, you got to download the game, but you don't have to seek it out. like you do something like Paladins or something like, your battle rights, things like that. So having that was a huge start. You've already got a community interested in general Blizzard stuff who's going to see this game. And the other thing that I think Heroes has going for it and still has going for it, given the numbers that we see for what modes people play, there's a lot of people who just come in from other games and play AI because they want to just move around as their favorite lore character. They want to just like be Jaina for a bit. They come in and they shoot some frostbolts. That was fun. Then they go back and play WoW or Hearthstone or whatever they were doing. And other, newer titles that are trying new systems and trying new stuff in the MOBA space, all they really have to sell is their mechanics and is their systems. Where Blizzard has this whole other atmosphere, this whole other background that's able to pull people in for very different reasons and maybe have them stay for, just because the gameplay is all right. And these players would never consider going playing League or Dota because they're not MOBA players. But, you bring them in with a little bit of that lore, a little bit of that nostalgia. And, you start converting some of them to quick match. You start converting some of them to ARAM, and you build players that way.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I know for myself, like, before I even saw any gameplay, like, I remember way back when I first saw that trailer of, like, Diablo and Nova in the desert and, like, Tyrael Kerrigan fighting the sky, I knew nothing about the game, but I knew I was downloading it. Like, just the nostalgia of the worlds, it's just amazing.
It really is. Like, just to this day, like, I like playing... One of my favorite heroes is Gul'dan. And part of it is like, yeah, his kit's cool. He does straight line skill shots and, it's fine. But just being the warlock from World of Warcraft and hearing the voice lines and the sound work around it is just so good. That Dark Nexus Gul'dan, I love the sound work around that. Just sounds so deep and strong. And I love... That's a big part of why that hero is my favorite, is the lore and the design work around it.
I never knew. I if you ask me your favorite DPS, I'd say Gul'dan, just from playing with you. I never would have said it's like the lore and the sound work. I would have thought it was like, oh, it's efficiency. He can clear waves and he can do damage to heroes. He's pretty good.
Yeah, he does all sorts of cool stuff. He doesn't have to go back for mana. I like those aspects of the kit, but compared to other stuff, the sound of Fellflame when it goes out is just this, like, it's this roaring sound. And then to hear the scream of the corruption, it grabbed me immediately. And that's how I got to playing so much Gul'dan.
So let's talk about how you found CCS.
Sure, yeah. So that was me listening to Into the Nexus for a long time. I believe it would be maybe about 2 years ago at this point. I can't remember how long it was. But I was in their Discord. They started up a Discord for patrons, and we'd go in there. We'd talk heroes and talk the show. And Valkymer's in there. Valkymer's in that Discord, has been for quite a while. And at some point, I just mentioned offhand, like, it'd be interesting to see what it's like to play in a 5-stack, try to play the best version of the game. And I was starting to get more interested in playing and getting better as a player. And Valkymer DM'd me. He's like, well, we've got this whole organization where amateurs get together and it doesn't really matter the skill level. You can put together a team and play. And invited me to the CCS Discord. And that's really how I got started with CCS.
All roads lead back to Valk.
Yeah, he was the key. He saw my post and he was like, I got one. That one's prime. And he DM'd me. And then I was.
It turns out Valkymer is just so prolific, not because he has so much to say, but it's a tactical scouting for new players. I mean, it works because, like, you get to that moment where you're like, I'm ready for it. I mean, like, I had a similar experience where, like, Mr. Hill, this guy I just met in QM once, like, said, like, oh, like, here's how you do a 4-man rotate. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is how you play. And, like, just, like, started something with me. Like, I've been craving that next level. So, I mean, Valkymer, good for him to be there. He always is. He's, like, lurking around the corner, just waiting for you to want something more. And then, boom!
Yeah.
Pops you with the CCS offer.
That's how it went.
So what did that look like then when you first joined and were first kind of getting into the scene?
So when I was first brought in, I mean, the CCS Discord now is massive. There's a ton of people in there. When I was first starting out there was, CCS 1, CCS 2 was just starting out. It wasn't even close to the same team that it is now. And we were thinking about starting a third team. That was where CCS was as an organization. Still pretty large for a Heroes Discord. Like I'd been in some others, mostly around podcasts. You got a handful of people, most of whom aren't talking. They're just there to support the show. But there was a lot of people in there and a lot of active people talking about the game. So I was like, it was a cool environment to be in. And it was right before season 9 of NGS started. And he mentioned, there's this guy, he's putting together a team. We could talk to him, see if you're interested. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And I was thinking, I've been playing a lot of bruiser offlaner types, so maybe I could go do that. And that's sort of how things started with me in CCS.
So, from insider information here, at the beginning of that season of, CCS 1 they've created their punching bag team, and they've created this new offshoot team on the other side of the Mississippi River, which would be CCS 3. Talk to us about the beginning, because you didn't start as the captain.
No.
And you just alluded to like what had happened there. And that was an interesting season for all parties involved of this Eastern edition of Can't Count Epics 2. Talk to us about like the beginning of that season, how you ended up becoming the captain.
That was an interesting one. So the guy Gunslinger was putting together the team.
The guy.
And he came in, he put together the team. We had maybe 4 or 5 weeks of practice beforehand. We did a couple scrims, mostly Storm League stuff. We were getting to know each other. And right before the season started, there was a change in his work schedule. Couldn't play anymore. And it was non-negotiable. It was just, he couldn't do it. It's like, okay, he couldn't do it. And then we sort of had a team meeting, and we were like, well, does anyone want to try to run the team? Like, we could fold right now, or we could try to move forward. It's like, well, we've practiced for like 4 or 5 weeks. Might as well try it. And I sort of volunteered and was like, I've got some decent administrative experience. I could probably handle that part. This is my first competitive experience, so I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to lead anything, but I can at least book matches and do all that stuff. So I stepped up, and I was the captain for that first season.
So, first season of CCS 3, there was Gunslingers out. We had Dorsch, who had previously played in Chair League and Bush League. We had Stoic, who had done literally nothing except for play Nazebo and Quick Match. We had D, who had also played no competitive, and we had Toons, who had played for his university in Heroes of the Dorm for 2 years. So there's just the context of the mix there. Corinne, you were going to ask a question.
First off, shout out to Toons. Played with him on Kent Carry Sony in the first next meeting. He's really good. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Keep going with what you're saying.
I'm curious here because like I'm remembering back on my own experience, playing on this team where it was just like what on earth are we all doing? I'd love to hear some of your learnings there, right? Because we're all here, we're thrown into this mix. We've got someone who's played competitively and been a captain before, and suddenly COVID hits, and he's like, "Well, I guess I have to work all day. Goodbye."
Yeah.
What was that like going from I'll try out this best version of the game, and then, well, I guess I'm going to lead this team into the fray?
It was a lot. It was a lot more than I expected, but I feel like it wasn't more than I could handle from a leadership perspective because, I'd led World of Warcraft teams before. I've run softball leagues. I've done a lot of administrative work in terms of getting leagues set up and running teams. So that part of it wasn't daunting so much to me. But to all of a sudden be the point of learning for the team was a lot because I was still trying to learn myself. I was trying to go through the motions and figure out how on earth to play this game as a group of 5. And now to sort of be in a teaching role as well was a lot. Valkymer helped out with a little bit of coaching, provided some coaching from other sources as well. but I didn't even know like how to put together a practice plan, how to do a replay review. I didn't know how to do any of that. So we just kind of played games and tried our best. Like the first season, predictably didn't end up going super well, but I learned a lot through that season, through the losses, through the trial and error in just, learning how to be a leader of a team like that and how to try to guide the growth of other people.
On that notion, like, because you've been doing this for a little bit now, like, is there anything that you've learned in recent times that like you feel like it would have really helped you out if you knew it from the get-go?
I think I should have applied a little bit more of my old WoW knowledge of, a team is still a group of people, and trying to apply the same rules and the same strategies in terms of, talking and communicating with your team to all members instead of an individual solution. I should have jumped on that earlier, because looking back at the team that we had, there were some very different personalities. Like there were some people who were just completely without ego, wanting to improve. There were some people who were just looking to have a good time and, enjoy Heroes of the Storm. And there were a lot of moments of personality clash that I didn't see coming that I really should have. And learning from that, I feel like I'm a lot better at catching that stuff now and getting a handle on the interpersonal connections of a team. Because if a team isn't talking, if a team isn't having fun playing the game with one another, they're going to lose all the time. And it doesn't matter how much macro knowledge you have, it doesn't matter how much mechanical prowess you might have. If people are not having fun and not enjoying playing the game with one another, you've lost already.
Doesn't matter whose core is going to go down if you're not having fun. That's well said.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I was excited to hear. Like, so how did this experience, like going into this, like having this experience and learning these things, and, that first season, you ended up taking season 10 off. You said, I still want to run Kael'thas Can't Spell because it's the greatest name of a team ever made. And I want to hold on to that glory there. But I'm going to take season 10 off. Was that so you could, figure out the game? Is that because you said, okay, I want to be the caster now? Or is that because you said, I want to figure out how to build the team that's going to always have fun together? Or maybe all three.
So the end of season 9, I don't think we made the playoffs. We missed the playoffs by a couple seeds.
By one murky game. Sorry.
We were like 9th seed. We needed a win. We didn't get it. We missed the playoffs. I already knew that one player was leaving. I later learned that multiple players were finding new teams. So it was basically going to be a full restart if I wanted to come back in for season 10. And at that time, I was really starting to ramp up with the casting, and I was really, really enjoying it. And I thought, okay, I can either try to restart right away, find new players, try to do the thing from the start, and actually recruit a new squad and keep doing the casting thing sort of when I'm available. Or I can take a season off and really drill in and try to be the absolute best caster I can be. And with the momentum that I'd picked up towards the end of season 9 with the casting, I thought, if I just really focus on this one thing instead of scheduling myself too thin, I think I can really make something happen with this. So that was the decision I made for season 10, was to be as full-time a caster. I mean, I didn't quit my job or anything, but I wasn't playing. I was just casting as often as I possibly could through season 10.
Yeah, you kind of looking back on it, it kind of sounds like the ideal success story. Like you join the community, right? And you made a post like, I want to join a team, and then next thing you know, you're captain of a new team in like a pretty prominent organization, right? And then you set your eyes on becoming a caster, and now you're the head caster. Like do you feel like things are kind of going super quickly, or are you kind of happy with the pace that things have been developing?
Um, I wasn't expecting the head caster position. So through season 10, I'm casting as much as I can. I think I ended the season close to 60 casts throughout everything. And I felt like it was going very, very well. Like I was getting DMs from people saying like I was doing a really good job. I was getting DMs from like casters who were doing it for a long time saying, you're looking really good, keep it up. And I was like, all right, this is going super well. The head caster thing, I mean, it's not really like for NGS. The head caster position isn't like you are the best caster. Here's your head caster role. The way it went was DB Smiley was the head caster at the time, but there's a lot going on with work. Couldn't keep up with everything that needed to be done. Had to abdicate the position. And at that time, like we're in the middle of COVID. I've got more time than ever to just commit to this one thing. And I started asking, like, what exactly does the headcaster do? And I don't want to say it's not as much as you think, but there's like, you've got to do some administrative stuff. You got to make sure that, the training is all set up. You've got to make sure that the playoff scheduling is all under there and do some reviews and stuff like that. And since I was working from home at the time, I'm still working from home now, so we can't go back into the office. I had time. I was like, well, I felt like it was something that I could add to my plate and really contribute to this organization, being NGS, that, had been good to me so far. It'd given me this opportunity to do a really cool thing in this casting. I was like, I can donate some time to the admin side because the administrative stuff doesn't phase me. I can do that. That's no problem. Organization, scheduling, administration comes very easily to me. So I felt like using my ability there to contribute to NGS was a no-brainer.
I'm curious here because most of us like don't have any like lots of people like they've never casted before. If they have, they've just been casual. But, like, can you talk to us a little bit about like the administrative work and maybe like you're not there, you're looking here to make an impact. Like talk to us about the work you do and like how you're trying to improve, NGS, which is already an amazing organization.
Yeah, so when it comes to like my work to try to get more casters and improve the casters we have, the number one thing is to have as little a barrier as possible to people getting started. And this is still something that I'm working on, is welcome videos, putting together links for people to get started with as little fuss as possible in terms of getting OBS scenes going, teaching them how to transition stuff, how to spectate, how to talk about the game, and being able to provide tips, not from like do you want to move on to the next level thing, like just super basic stuff, like because what people tend to balk on when it comes to wanting to be a caster, first of all, is the technical side. OBS scares them. The idea of being on camera and talking and saying the wrong things scares them. And trying to just tell them, like, you don't have to immediately jump in there and be Bahamut. Like, you can go in, you don't even need a camera. You already know the game. The fact that you're part of the NGS means you probably know a lot more about the game than you actually think you do. So at that point, it's just, we'll get your OBS set up. Now we've got a great new video from Jinxie Cat on how to tweak your OBS at the start, like get your audio levels right, how to move graphics around. That's something we didn't have before this last season. And just get the scary part out of the way and just start talking about games. And it's really worked out lately. And I want to refine that even further going into season 12.
Man, I need to learn how to do this stuff because my OBS is just thrown together. Awesome.
You kind of mentioned. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just thinking like that's amazing, like where we're coming and like how we're building the community. Go ahead, Kurt.
Mm-hmm. you kind of mentioned like creating these tools for new casters. Is recruiting new casters like an active task, or do you just kind of have a huge inflow of people wanting to cast but not knowing how?
Honestly, the biggest recruiting tool we have is current casters and like the hype channel in the NGS Discord. We've got like our casting numbers right now are insane. We're at like 85 to 90% coverage of games right now. Like it's absolutely bonkers. But the way things tend to go is people go and watch the games of their friends or the games of their division, and it's casted. So they see the casts, and maybe they're interested in giving it a try. Maybe they've got a friend who does it. Maybe they see it and it appeals to them. And we've just got this one channel in the NGS Discord where all you have to do is say, "Hey, I'm interested." And we take it from there. We get you the role. We've got a nice pin set up in the caster channel that has every single thing you might want to know or download or set up when it comes to casting. And it's all set up so you can go from, "Hey, I'm interested," to your first cast as quickly and easily as possible. And having that process as streamlined and as simple as possible is basically our recruiting tool, so that we don't have to go around and DM people like, "Hey, we need a caster," or you seem interested in doing that. It's being able to, like, our advertising is that we have current casters who are really, really good, and it inspires people to sign up.
It's really wholesome.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at that. Like people just get out there and they cast it. It makes it like
Yeah.
I always think of NGS like the bowling league, but it's like the bowling league if everyone also like stuck around to watch the next team play and like talk about how great they were. It's really so wholesome. That's a great way to describe this.
Yeah. It's like,
Go ahead.
yeah, it's really like the number, like I can talk about the Twitch followers I've gained since becoming a caster. Like, it's not so much that you end up with the same group of people who always come out for your cast. It does happen sometimes, but people come out to watch the teams they're interested in. If they're a sub for that team, if they're just friends with that team, they're scouting for their division. Like, they will come out and they will watch, and they're not looking like, "Oh, this person's casting, so I'm not going to go watch that match." They're out there watching that match. So it's really a great way to actually get in touch with the community, just signing up to be a caster, because you're going to get people coming in and saying hi. And, you know, a lot of people are also willing to like help out. If you're a new caster, if you're not sure about your audio levels, just be like, "Hey, am I quieter than the game?" They'll be like, "Oh, you know, turn this up or turn that down." And it's really, you know, it's a, I think it's a pretty stress-free way to jump into it. Obviously, I've been doing this for a little bit now, a lot of casts under my belt, so the stress level is a little bit lower for me personally. But I found there wasn't, like, you know, when I was starting out, a bunch of people going like, "Oh, this is bad. I don't like this." Like, that just never happened. People were just happy that there were casters at all, and I was able to improve in a really sort of safe environment.
So we've kind of talked about how you've gotten to where you are now. So what's kind of on the plate for you at this moment?
So right now, I mean, I decided for season 11 that I was going to try to make the team again. I wasn't going to go full-time casting for another season because I felt like I probably could have done that, but I wanted to be more involved in the game as a player. With the CCL starting up, the idea of, for some reason, the drafts in the CCL were really central to my interest in the league, and I wanted to apply that knowledge in more than just a theoretical way. I wanted to learn about drafting and heroes and try to bring that into a team setting. So that was the main impetus for me to start things up again. But going forward, like the crew I've got now is CCS3. We're having a good time. We hit a little bit of a hiccup through the season that we're bouncing back from, but I do want to carry forward the team into the next season. I'm still not sure what I want to do time split wise between that and casting, because I still like right now I'm casting, I try to cast maybe 3 times a week. it would be nice to do more, but also if I try to do more than that, I'm really cutting into the time that I can really commit to a team. So the balance of like 3 casts and 3 days of play is pretty good right now. And I feel like that's going to be good going forward. But it's going to come down to whether the team is okay with sticking to 3 days a week or if they need more. And then it'll be a decision for me on whether I want to give on the casting or whether I want to maybe I need to step back if the team is like we're really want to go through with this. We want to go like 5 days a week. It's like I can't commit 5 days a week. I've got other stuff that I'm trying to do, but you know, time will tell. We're still got a couple weeks left in this season. We've got quite the from what I can see, we've got quite the possible off season between now and season 12. So options are open right now.
You kind of alluded to a non-answer to my next question. Like, which are you casting to be better at the game? Are you playing the game to be a better caster? Are they these independent spheres? Like, because for me, like I started casting because I wanted to get better at the game, and I still use casting as a vehicle to push myself to improve that. But like for you, the way you've described it, they're almost two different Heroes of the Storm experiences. Or is there some kind of marriage between them?
I would say if I had to put one over the other, that my playing the game is more a vessel to keep me up to date casting wise. Um, like I could stay up to date on the meta by just casting more and doing more research and taking more notes, but being able to have that blend of personal experience at my level of play and viewed experience at higher and lower levels of play and combining that all together to create a more dynamic and more informed cast is I probably ultimately my main goal. Because right now if you told me it's one or the other, you can either play or you can cast, I would say I'm going to cast. Because that still fits with that main way that I tend to interact with games, which is not playing them. It's the peripheral stuff. It's listening, it's watching, it's commentating. That's still, even through all of this and through all the development I've had with CCS and with teams and getting better as a player, it's still my first instinct when it comes to Heroes is to consume content before I play. And I think that's going to be the way it is going forward.
Wow, you heard it here first. I'm curious. Like you mentioned your notes. Like, do you have like a physical notebook? Do you take notes on your Google Drive or something? Like, can you share with us some of the things that are going through your head as you're watching? Storm Division. You're playing in Division C, and then you're casting Division E.
So when it comes to differentiating the drafts between the highest levels and like stuff like Div E, when it comes to lower divisions, a lot of my research and my analysis of the drafting is more around individual heroes and what they bring to the game. So generally the compositions aren't quite as clean. They might be missing an aspect or two, but it's important to look at what each individual hero might bring to a specific matchup. So, like something like Li Ming. You hear all the time, Li Ming on Infernal Shrines, not as good. You don't want to pick Li Ming on Shrines because all of her abilities get caught up in the minions on the Shrine. It's hard to flank. There's not a lot of good vision around there. But then you see it come through in Division E. It's not so much, oh, it's Li Ming on Shrines. They could have picked a better mage. It's like, oh, they went Li Ming Varian. They're just looking to go kill some people. They're not worried about shrine positioning and rotations and wave clear. They're just looking to blow people up, and that's the game plan. So will the other team draft to try to stop that? Are they going to draft to try to play the map? And it's a lot more about those individual matchups. When it comes to the higher level stuff, I'm more interested in, because they're gonna fill every role needed for the map. They're gonna have enough wave clear. They're going to have enough camp take. They're going to have enough zone control and cleanses. They're going to have all of that stuff. But how they do that stuff, I find really, really interesting. Like, we're seeing a ton of double healer stuff. We're seeing a ton of no tank stuff. And being able to look at the draft as a whole and figure out how they're still going to play this map without some of the more traditional pieces that you might see in Heroes of the Storm is what's interesting to me about those higher levels.
We've kind of been talking about, like, since Wild Hearts came onto the scene for CCL, I think the kind of the instinct is like, oh, like, this is like a Wild Heart draft. Like, Wild Hearts inspired this. But, you know, you've been into this casting of the highest level of HOTS before CCL started. You were already a part of that sphere. Is this a Wild Heart thing? Like from your own, you know, casting oversight knowledge, were we having double healer no tank comps, or double healer and or no tank comps pre Wild Heart, or has this been brewing and are they following the trend or setting it? I'm asking, I guess.
So I think there's two different things there. So, you know, double healer no tank was definitely a thing before Wild Heart CCL came around. The reason that you would run something like that was if you were just trying to fight forever and not die, and you didn't need a tank for that. But you just needed more damage over time. You needed more mobility. And you knew that the double healer was enough sustain for a higher damage character to get away with being on that front line. So that's been a thing for a while. What I think Wild Hearts started doing that was different was they weren't doing a double healer thing so much. They were compensating for the things that a normal tank brings by spreading those responsibilities out amongst other characters. So, I mean, the one that we see a lot that is actually starting to trickle down into other divisions is Maiev main tank. Maiev doesn't have any self-healing, but what Maiev does have, is wave clear. That's very, very important. If you have wave clear, you can get away with a lot of other picks that you might not be able to otherwise get away with. You can get away with having like a second PvP assassin because you know you've got the wave clear coming from the Maiev. You can get away with a support hero that doesn't clear waves because you've got Maiev doing it. Maiev also has very good engage, can engage with the Eeg, has the Umbral Bind, can engage probably better than most tanks. And it's a really, really strong thing to do. But what Maiev doesn't do is heal herself. She's got, you know, the Vault of the Wardens is there, and that's great. But they would then take stuff like, you know, you put a really high regen bruiser next to Maiev, and you put a really flighty DPS behind Maiev, and a bunch of heroes that don't require as much healing. So you don't need the double healer to keep Maiev up. You just need everyone else to not require healing. And they would take all of these separate parts and put together a draft that wasn't just, you know, double bruiser, double healer, and an off lane. It was different parts of specific hero kits that somehow mashed together to form a team. And I think that was really what people started to notice about Wild Heart CCL.
And you're seeing this trickling down through the amateur leagues as well.
I am. So the first thing that really came down was Deathwing main tank. That was something that we started to see in Storm Division. We saw it. I'm not sure if we really saw it played out in CCL just because they would have been able to counter draft it very, very well, and Deathwing is famously slow. But throughout Storm Division in the first season, I started to see it a lot. It was just, you know, you'd go Deathwing main tank because Deathwing has wave clear, Deathwing has zone control, and, you know, not being able to heal didn't really matter because the enemy team simply couldn't step up. You'd surround Deathwing with CC, stuff like a Leoric, stuff like an Uther or a Stukov that could just keep people in one spot, and Deathwing would just kill them with the overwhelming damage. So it was this really weird way of tanking that started to actually be very effective before teams had to like account for this possibility in the early picks of their draft. And now, you know, Uther Stukov frontline, started to get really, really popular in CCL, and that's still something that we see occasionally through even NGS divisions. Is people taking an early Uther, and it's like, well, you could go a Stukov with that, you could go a normal tank with that, you could do all sorts of stuff, and you started to see all these weird Uther comps come on out. That was very popular, still very popular among NGS teams. And I won't say that, Wildheart is responsible for all of it. Wildheart definitely garnered a lot of attention for their alternate strategies when it comes to which role was responsible for which things. But I think they definitely boosted the creativity of some teams and some, drafters. And, maybe we don't need someone with a tank icon to have a team that has all the things that that tank brought. So you need someone who can soak damage, you need someone who can engage, you need someone who can peel, you need someone who can have, check vision and check bushes and stuff. That doesn't all necessarily have to come from one hero. That can come from different stuff. It can come from multiple heroes. You can get two from one from another. And I think that's the thing that's really changed since we saw Wildheart come on through.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. We have quite a stockpile of questions from the community here, so I want to make sure that we're able to pop all these off before we run out of time.
Excellent, bring it on.
So starting out, Anaressa asks, so Crush, you fill a lot of roles, being NGS's head caster, casting a lot in general, being a team captain, playing DPS, drafting, shot calling, and likely other things I don't know about or aren't thinking about. Which roles have you found complement each other the best, where improving one has the largest impact on improving another? And are there connections between those skills that have surprised you?
So, in terms of roles that benefit each other, I think being a drafter has definitely helped in terms of me being a player, because it's helped me to better understand what I'm expecting from what I'm playing, what I'm expecting from the heroes my team is playing, and that's helped out in a player sense and in a shot call sense, because I have to know what my draft is supposed to do rather than, just heroes that I'm good at. So that has been a pretty good, triad of things that have been able to work with each other, is being a drafter, trying to be a shot caller, and just being a player in general. Is those things all tend to inform each other a little bit, and I think it starts with the drafting. In terms of just balancing everything, like balancing casting, balancing being a head caster, being a captain, it is a lot of stuff. But the main thing that I do is, what I do personally is I just have days that are for certain things. So like casting is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Playing with the team is Monday, Friday, Saturday, and Sundays is off to make sure that, my wife doesn't divorce me for spending so much time in Heroes of the Storm. But it's, I don't really do team stuff on casting days, and I don't do casting stuff on team days. And it helps me to focus down a lot on doing a good job on that specific thing before I'm able to move on to the next thing, rather than it being just kind of a melange of everything at once where I'm not sure how much time or effort to put on to one thing. Having it separated out specifically, like in terms of time, has really helped me just do everything and try to do my best at everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of ties into something I think it was Romedy said during one of the CCS development days, specifically around practice. Like, have set start and end times. Making sure that if practice ends at 9, it ends at 9. You don't like linger on, right? Like having preset times for everything is really good for staying on track.
It helps, like just knowing that, like, okay, between, like, if I need to change my scenes or incorporate a new thing for OBS for my casting, it's like, all right, from 6 to 8, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to focus on doing that. I'm just going to get it done. I'm not going to try to watch a stream and check Discord and, have dinner going and try to do this thing, because it'll never get done. Just go like, okay, for this amount of time, I'm going to focus on this. And, over time, I've been able to more accurately figure out how long stuff tends to take. So it's easier that way. But at the start, just, I'm going to spend an hour on this and seeing how much you can get done in an hour. And then go next time. It's like, well, I kind of needed more than an hour. So you allot more next time. Or you decided you're going to do it for an hour. And then after 15 minutes, you're like, well, I've finished. It's like, well, now for next time that you need to do this thing, you can allot less time to it and allow more time to do something else. But having your days planned and trying to just do one thing at a time will let you learn how long it actually takes you to do something, and B, better focus on those things that you want to do and feel an actual sense of accomplishment in getting individual things done. Because if you're trying to do everything at once and you're kind of not finishing any of it, it feels bad. Like you're trying to, it's like you're not really getting anything done, but you're doing so much stuff. You're like, do I need to stop doing stuff? And you're not getting a sense of progression at all. But it's like, I need to schedule my next 3 matches. Boom, 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 schedule 3 matches. That part's done. All right. Endorphins, we did it. Rather than, I'll send out some DMs and then do this other thing and then forget to message them back. And it's like, creates this cloud that I just don't work well under.
That makes sense, yeah. The next question we have is from Valk. Valkner's asking, what led to the idea of exercise redeems on your stream?
The exercise redeems were part of what I've seen with other Twitch streams, is viewers like making the streamer do stuff. They like, having some sort of power over the broadcast, whether it's, changing a graphic on the screen, making a sound thing go, or, the streamer has to tell a joke. They like influencing what they're seeing. So I figured, I've got these old weights lying around. I've been meaning to get some more exercise in anyway. I bet people would have a fun time doing that and making me go and like do curls or push-ups or whatever. So I set it up at the start and I made sure there's limits on it per stream. That was the first thing I checked. It's like, you can't make me do 700 push-ups. You can do this many. And it's been pretty successful so far. Like, people seem to be into it. I'm able to knock out a couple during a cast in between drafts. And, I've got a whole scene with like video and audio linked to it now. And it just seems, people are having fun with it.
Have you ever had a moment where you're kind of burnt out and you're just like, why did I do this to myself?
I remember one day specifically. I can't remember what. I think I was just completely underslept. Work was stressful. And I had a cast and I was like, I cannot do this stuff today. Like, I just can't do it. So I put it in the title of the stream. I was so sure. I was like, no redeems today, sorry. And still some came through. I was like, I can't do it today. I'll give you the points back. We'll do it another time. But generally, like, the way that I have the limits set and the way that I've set it up, it's not like a huge burden for me. Like, it's not like a to the edge type workout that I allow them to make me do. So it makes it a little easier to just go like, all right, I can do 10 curls with 15-pound dumbbells. That's not a huge deal. I can knock that out, even if I'm feeling a little tired or a little exhausted. I can usually get through it.
Stoke, did you have any input, or should I just keep popping off community questions?
Let's get through some more community questions. I do want to circle back to more of your experience and talk about the current roster on season 11. But let's
Sure.
We're on a roll with these community questions. Let's do them.
Alrighty, so the next question is from Fujin. Fujin asks, Crush, how do you prioritize your time between casting, administrative stuff, and enjoying the game?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, it's just I literally have certain days that I do certain things. Like, I cast games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If there is administrative stuff to be done, like there's a review or there's something to check. Sometimes it's as simple as like answering Discord questions. I can do that all the time. But I do reviews of casters on Saturdays. I do my own cast Tuesday through Thursday. and that's just when I do the stuff. And if I'm doing something like that on another day, there's got to be a pretty good reason for it, because scheduling out my time the way I do allows me to do as many things as I've committed to, and I feel like that's an important part of my day.
Yeah, for sure. So the next question also comes from Fujin. Crush, what differentiates a good cast from an amazing cast other than the quality of the game?
I think the main thing, other than game quality, is, I mean, number one is making sure that I'm personally feeling good. So, like, I'm well rested, I've eaten, I've drank enough water, so I'm not like sparking, my voice isn't cutting out in the middle of a cast. So, if I feel like my voice is on point, the game's going well, all that stuff is fine. What really turns a series from good to great is, I mean, taking gameplay out of it is probably chat interaction. Like seeing a lot of people out, not necessarily interacting with me, but interacting with each other and commenting on the plays and talking to each other is really cool to see. And usually, like, I just do a quick peek over to chat every once in a while, see what they're talking about, and to see them just, they're not waiting for me to start the conversation. They're just having a good time in here is really special for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Our next question, also from Fujin, asks, Crush, co-cast when? With a heart emoji.
Well, I've got a pretty predictable cast schedule. The main thing that's prevented me from having more co-casters this season is a lot of the people I tend to ask are now casting on their own. So, like, I'd have Dax on, or I'd have Taco on, I'd have, Jinxie Cat on with me, and it's absolutely fantastic to co-cast, cast and co-cast with these folks. They're all doing their own cast too. So it's tough to reach out ahead of time and be like, hey, don't do your own cast. Instead, come on over to my channel and let's hang out. And a lot of times they'll say yes, but I feel bad that I'm taking such great casters possibly away from other teams. So it ultimately for me now comes down to, if someone happens to not be around and it wants to come on and co-cast, do it as kind of a spur of the moment thing. But I mean, I know Fujin, your casting numbers are really high and you're getting a lot of stuff done. But if you've got a night off, if there's something you want to come on for a co-cast, we can make that happen. And I know you're casting like 6 games a week already, so I don't want to overload you. But if you're interested, hit me up.
Fujin is on fire this season.
Yeah, she's getting it done.
So our next question comes from Wolf. Wolf asks, Crush, was the original team harder to have come together or the new squad?
So that one's a little bit, it's hard to say because the first team I didn't actually put together. The first team was kind of given to me just because of the situation with Gunslinger. In terms of putting together the second team, I think it started with one player. So the first player that I reached out to was Dwarf. Dwarf played with Limit Break last season. Dwarf's been in the CCS Discord. Knew the team wasn't going ahead. And I thought, what better way to start a team than to have just a solid tank, right? Like, you bring in the tank, make sure that that's locked down, then you fill in the rest. So I started with Dwarf, got him on board, and then we kind of worked together to find other people to join. And part of our search was not only just experience and Storm League rank and all that fun stuff. A lot of it was I wanted to make sure the personalities were going to come together well. And, things happen over time. Some personnel changes were needed, but overall, I think everyone that ended up staying on and ended up being recruited did manage to get along fairly well. And over time, that's gotten better. We've brought in a couple of new people that are starting to gel well. And I think the main thing that I would say about, putting together a team is you're probably not going to get it right the first time. And the situation is going to change over time. Like, people's priorities change, people, what they want changes. And to just roll with that and understand that people are going to come and go, and to try to recruit as best you can and deal with what you've got, that's just part of the gig. There's no magic recipe to looking at a free agent app and understanding whether they're going to be in it for the long term. You've just got to bring them in and try it out.
I think that's valuable strategic like insight on how to build a team here. Do you have any more like tactical tips for someone either looking to build a team or to keep a team together, like things that you've employed? Because you said that was like something you learned from the season 9 CCS 3, and now in CCS 3 version 11, you're trying to make it this experience where everyone can have fun. Like, what are some of the tactics you've used to build that environment where the players want to stay together?
The number one attribute that I figured out pretty early on in building the team that I wanted is I needed people who talked. I needed people who talked in the game. I needed people who talked in Discord. I needed people who talked to each other. I needed people who talked to the community in general. Because the way that things tend to fester and the way that things tend to get blown out of proportion is when people are silent and people are not participating. So having people who will talk means that they're going to talk about when things are going bad as well as good. And it's a lot easier as a group if people are willing to talk to each other, that you can work that stuff out. So if you're a talker, you're a talky type person and you want to start a team, find other people who talk. It's incredibly, incredibly important for something like Heroes of the Storm, which is a game about communication, to have that part of a person when they're joining a team.
On the topic of kind of being talky, you seem like a very charismatic person, right? The way you carry yourself and talk seems very, yeah. Like, is that something that you actively look to improve and kind of work on, or have you just kind of always naturally had that kind of radio host voice?
It is definitely something I've worked on. Like, I started streaming long before I started casting as a method to get more experience talking, get more experience in front of people. Because, I mean, I'm generally introverted, but I always, like, when it comes to my friend group, I've always been, happy and outgoing. When it comes to, like, finding stuff to do, I'm usually the person that picks what we're doing, organizes when we're getting together, that whole thing. So I've always had that part of my personality. But when it comes to speaking, to being able to present in front of people and be, a streamer, interacting with folks, a lot of that was practice over time. So, like, and I think part of what kickstarted me to where I'm at now was I ran my own podcast for a little bit, and I got to learn more about, putting together a product and speaking tones and being able to look at how I talked and listen to how I talked and try to make it better. And through casting was very similar. Casting is like putting together a whole podcast every night. Like, you're talking for an hour and a half. And it's very easy to go back and, am I repeating the same words over and over again? Am I, tailing off at the end of sentences? Can people understand what I'm saying? And it created an environment where it really supercharged my ability and my confidence in that sort of arena.
I find that fascinating, the concept of, like, this persona you built isn't just kind of a battle tag or whatever. It's a product, right? You are the Krushinator. It's the whole deal, right? That's
Yeah, I
pretty
mean,
cool.
people talk about fake it till you make it. What that really means is, like, you've just got to do something. You've got to keep doing it like you know what you're doing until you know what you're doing. And that was a lot of what I did at the start. Like, I would just try stuff in casts. I would talk and I would try to talk about other stuff, and it didn't always make sense. And sometimes I wasn't, I couldn't hear me properly, or I was stumbling over my words, and I just kept trying. And eventually people thought I was really good at it. Sometimes I still look back like, what on earth am I talking about? But, it's just something that I think about actively every time I go into a show like this, or I'm trying to do a cast, or I'm doing a stream. is working on that aspect and not just slipping into a state where I'm just kind of sitting back in my chair and mumbling like I'm just chilling out with a stream, but like I'm here to present, I'm here to do a show, and that underlying notion I feel like allows me to get better every time I do something like this.
For sure, yeah. So the next question in line is Osprey asks, if you were a talk show host and your CCS3 teammates are your house band, which instrument would they play?
Which instrument would they play? All right, let's think. Eric's on the bass, because Eric wants to just have the chords to go through and just support the team. Let's see. Dwarf's probably on drums, trying to set the tone from the back, but doesn't want to be on vocals. Last ones are difficult. Ulysses is definitely lead guitar. Absolutely lead guitar for Ulysses. Gosh. What would Kavlor and Sneaky do? I feel like Sneaky would be like the person in the front row who's actually part of the band trying to hype up the crowd. And Kavlor would be like the band manager.
That was probably one of the most thought out responses I think we've gotten for that question.
That's what I got. That's my initial thoughts.
That's great. The next question Valk asks is, what do you think the favorite breakfast food of each of your teammates is?
Favorite breakfast food? Well, I mean, Dwarf is bacon. That one's easy enough. Ulysses, what would Ulysses be having for breakfast? I feel like Ulysses is a fresh fruit breakfast kind of guy. He's a West Coaster, doesn't experience winter. His little corner of Vancouver. That's a fresh fruit climate. What would Eric be eating for breakfast? You know what I think Eric's eating for breakfast? I think Eric's eating Fruit Loops because that's what his kids are eating. That's what I think Eric's eating for breakfast. He's just having whatever the fam's having. Man. Kavlor. Kavlor feels like a steak and eggs guy. I think he's going for that hearty steak breakfast. And Sneaky is trying to make sure Dwarf doesn't eat himself into a bacon coma.
Is all of your team in Canada?
Kavlor is not, and Eric is not.
So 2/3.
But everyone else is. Ulysses, Sneaky, Dwarf, and I are all Canadian.
Heck yeah. So Fujin asks, so Tasteless, I believe this is talking about the StarCraft caster, famously said that he got into casting because he went to a WCG event and the caster wasn't very good, so he talked to the admin and did it instead. Would you say new casters who aren't as experienced provide another inflow of casters to show that it doesn't have to be amazing from the start?
Did you say newer casters aren't as experienced provide another inflow of casters to show it doesn't have to be amazing from the start? I do think there's definitely an advantage to having like less than fully professional casters for something like NGS. Like if it was all fully decked out productions, there's a barrier there. It's like when all you see is CCL level and they're like, do you want to be a caster? It's like, how could I possibly step up into something like that? But when the majority of the casting base is just folks like you, just folks like, who thought it might be interesting and jumped in, and it's not that they're poor quality casts, but it's personal productions. It's people with their own graphics. It's people with whatever equipment they have on hand, and they're just making it work. And that sort of feel and atmosphere when it comes to a broadcast, I think is definitely a lot more inviting to get more people into the idea of casting.
Alrighty, and the last question on our list so far is the Minsky asks, where does the name the Krushinator come from?
The Krushinator comes from season 1, episode 2 of Futurama. It was, I can't remember if I watched the episode live on broadcast or when the first season DVDs came out, but it was around the year 2000, and I saw the episode where the crew all went to the moon, and they went to the robot farmer's house who had 3 robot daughters, were Daisy May 128K, Lulu Bell 7, and the Krushinator. And I thought that was the funniest thing I had ever heard. I was like 10 or 11 years old or whatever, and that was hilarious. And and that's just where it came from. I was just playing Halo. I was Krushinator. Any sort of land stuff, that was the name I entered. And that was the name of my first Warcraft character. And it's just stuck this whole time.
Wow, you've had this since you said like 10 or 11.
Yeah, like it's just, that was, before that, I was just totally random stuff and nothing really sticked. I would change the name with different games, and it felt good. Like I got that, felt good. I got the Gmail address. I didn't have to put any numbers on the end of it, so that was a good point to stay. I got the Twitter account later on, and it's all just kind of fell together since.
Very nice.
What's like, this is like, it sounds like a question that's to end the show, and I don't really want it to be that, but I'm curious because we're talking about like what's next for like the Krushinator, the brand. Like, you're headcaster of NGS, you're captain of an NGS team, you know, you're active in the CCS community, you're very well respected in this amateur Heroes of the Storm sphere. I mean, you're on Twitter and people know you. Like, where are you taking this brand next?
You know, when it comes to the brand, the next step for me is probably like higher level casting gigs. Like if CCL expands and there's more, you know, in-house type stuff going on. I've done a couple of those so far. Just expanding into that community and doing casting in general. And I have thought about like, what is casting like beyond Heroes of the Storm? Do I start branching out into other games? Do I have to keep my eye on the horizon, like Eternal Sunshine, Black Horizon?
Herbs. Eternal Return.
Yeah,
Black
Eternal
Survival.
Return, Black Sunshine, right?
Survival.
Something like this?
Survival.
Black Survival. That's the one. I was looking at that like, do I need to jump on this? Like, do I need to start keeping up on this game? Because it's starting to get to a point where like people seem to like my broadcasting. And you know, Heroes is great. I'm doing Heroes because I love Heroes. If it was a career decision, I wouldn't be investing so much into the game, because right now it's like it's going to be a community thing and probably not much more when it comes to a casting career that people would be thinking about building. But I think about it and it's like, that's kind of the next step. Is like, am I a caster? Am I a commentator? Do I need to start branching out? Do I need to try other stuff? Is that the way that I need to have the bent in terms of my personal stream? Do I start streaming more and just do replays and just really focus in on the casting? Do I try to just be a variety streamer? Do I be a Heroes of the Storm streamer? But when it comes to the brand, I feel like the brand is starting to coalesce around that commentary and casting idea. And it's really, really fun for Heroes of the Storm right now. And I'd love to advance in this community. But maybe I start thinking about other games as well. Maybe I keep my eye out for new stuff that's coming and just try to jump in and be the caster for that game. That's something I do think about.
In the realm of Heroes of the Storm, right, you kind of have your toes dipped into multiple communities in a way, right? Like you've got your headcaster in NGS, you're a team captain in CCS. Are there any other orgs that you're kind of partaking in that maybe people just don't really know about?
Right now, no. In terms of organizations, I mean, the closest thing to being, you know, with an organization was probably CCL. Like, I've done a few of their in-house casts. I'm certified in their co-caster program, so I could go and I could do my own casts of their stuff if I wanted to, which I've considered doing there for season 2 as an added thing that I can put onto my channel. But no other real organizations when it comes to that. I mean, as a caster, I know some casters have gone the route of like, we've got people that are, they're affiliated with Wildheart and they're a partnered type streamer with them, or they're affiliated with Oxygen. They do podcast work or things like that. And I've thought, what would I get out of something like that? What would they expect in return for some sort of partnership like that? And I don't really know what the arrangement is. It's not off the table. It's just I'm not really sure what they would want from that kind of partnership in terms of seeking something like that.
Okay. We actually have a couple more questions from chat coming in here.
Yeah.
Fujin was asking, I noticed your name on Twitter is the Krushinator. Is the part of the branding, or is it just Krushinator?
Most of the time when talking about me personally, it's just Krushinator. The Krushinator was born partly of, that was just the cadence of the way it was said on that Futurama episode that made it so funny to me, and partly because it's a name that I could get everywhere. I did look into possibly shortening it to just Krushinator, but a couple of the accounts on a couple of sites were already taken, and it felt like, at first I was thinking, like, do I become Crush TV, just something easy to type in? And then I was like, nobody types in URLs. You click links. It doesn't really matter what that link is. And I've already built up this sort of name recognition and goodwill around what I've got. So I just sort of leaned into, like, it's the Krushinator on all of these channels, and it sort of creates that same feel that I had way back in the day when I chose the name. So having it as a way that people refer to me personally, I would find weird, but referring to the accounts with the I feel makes sense.
Okay. And Mainsky asks, do you think that someone needs to play a game to be a good caster for the game?
So it comes in certain levels. No, I don't think you must play a game to be able to cast it, because there's certain skills when it comes to being a caster, especially if you're being like a host or something like that, not necessarily a play-by-play. You can get away with just being a good host, being a good commentator, and being able to work with a team and not really know the game much at all. It's still like, you should do basic research. You should know roughly what you're talking about in terms of the game, but I don't think you need a lot of play experience for most games. There are a couple of notable exceptions, I would say. The main one being StarCraft. Unless you're purely a host for that, the viewers of StarCraft are very, very involved in the game. Like, people who play StarCraft play only StarCraft, and what they find interesting about it is the vast wealth of knowledge that you can get from playing and viewing. So it's pretty difficult to jump onto that scene and not have a pretty good base of knowledge about it. But like, for fighting games, knowing the names of the characters, knowing basically what they're trying to do, you can get away with a lot. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I feel, being a good commentator isn't necessarily about game knowledge. It's about speaking rhythms. It's about working and bouncing off of other casters. It's about asking the right questions. And a lot of more professional setups, they'll have someone like a Kalaris who casts like dozens of different games and there's no way he plays all of them. But he's such a good host that he just knows how to ask the other casters who do know the game all the right questions to get them talking about the right things. And that's definitely a role that you can take as a caster. You don't have to be the analyst. You can be the host, you can be the color guy, and not know as much about the game and still bring a lot to a broadcast.
So I'm interested in this now because you asked a ton of questions about like, do I go to herbs? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I like you asked all of these questions to us, and I would love to like for the next 4 hours ask those all back to you, but we don't have that option. So I'll give you a binary here. If let's say Wild Heart reaches out to you and says, "Hey, Crush, like we want you to be head caster for Wild Heart TV." Which is just going to be focused on Heroes of the Storm. And the same moment, Oxygen hits you a DM and be like, yo, we love your work on HOTS. We'd love to bring you into a host position for our Rocket League, Valorant, and CSGO program. We're not focused on HOTS. Steve and Cav, they got that locked down. But we on those 3 properties. Weighing those 2, which would you take? Like, the Oxygen would give you more exposure to a broader audience. Wild Heart, top org, really, really HOTS focused. Which would you choose?
Probably the Oxygen offer. I would probably go for the wider shot in terms of games, because I feel like that would be a really interesting challenge and a way to see whether I can actually translate what I've built here in Heroes to other stuff. Because like games like Valorant, like Rocket League, I've played them before. I don't necessarily know the most about them, but being able to go in and say, okay, I've got a Valorant event in 5 days. Do I have the ability to go in, research everything that I would need to know, and put on a good show? Because I feel like that's a huge, huge thing for someone who wants to be a professional caster, is they need to be able to be just handed an opportunity and be like, all right, do my prep, do a good show. And that's part of being a professional, not having it be the thing that you spend 50 hours a week on and then go do something. It's like, we want you to do something completely out of left field in a week. It's like, all right, I do my prep and I put together, the product that they're paying me for. It's that sort of thing. And having an opportunity to jump in on a bunch of other games, I feel like would be a really, really cool way to test if I'm able to do that.
I asked you a year ago when we were teammates about your hobby of streaming. Like, in this time, I don't think casting was really on the radar for you because it's early in our tenure. And you said something that's stuck with me to this day. You said, like, it's just a hobby that I really like. And so I do it every day, or whatever the cadence was, because I really like doing it. Is with the way that your streaming has exploded in the HOTS sphere. Do you still feel the same way?
So, with the job that I have, with the way that my life is set up, I would have to get a screaming good offer to consider going actually full-time with something like this. I think the majority of casters for anything, for any game, are doing it as a part-time, as a contract thing. There's very, very few exceptions to that when it comes to esports commentators. If my life was in such a position where I didn't need that steady flow of income, where I could take a chance on something like commentating a bunch of different games at once, trying a full-time streaming thing, I think I would try. But currently, the risk-reward ratio is not even close for me to make that choice.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And this is I'm gonna ask a hypothetical question that is so ridiculous it's maybe not even worth asking, but like if you could support yourself and your wife with the gig life. You know, you're never gonna be killing it, but you can be supported by doing full-time casting. Would you do it, and would you have said yes a year ago to that question?
I think I would. There's a certain, I mean, I'm 30 years old. I've been working corporate for nearly 8 years. And the idea that I could do something that I'm passionate about all the time and maintain a lifestyle while doing it is very, very appealing to me. There's a certain safety in my job. There's like the pay is great, the sustainability and long-term stability is really, really good in terms of just being able to live a good life and save for the future and have a retirement, all that sort of fun stuff. But if someone told me like, hey, we can get you a job with some acceptable level of recompense and you can do it while casting and streaming, I would jump on that. But I'm not willing to take that, start at the bottom as a full-time streamer making nothing. Like I would have to get to the point where I'm nearly there part-time to consider doing it full-time.
Is that even? I've been thinking about this myself. Is that even possible? Like that perfect offer. Like, Crush, we want you on the LCS. Like that's where we want you. Can you even get there without being full time beforehand? Like, is it a catch-22?
I think for established stuff right now, I'm not sure it's possible. Like the LCS, GSL, all that stuff, like the few places that actually have full-time paid commentators that are doing just that and only that. Like there's like 4 of them. Among all the casters and all the commentators in esports, there's like 4 dudes that are actually able to do it as their full-time job. So it's just not a field where that's really possible. They're all doing streaming on the side or they're doing other gigs on the side to make a living so that they can do this thing that they love. And I think if you're going to make it a full-time career, it's got to be in broadcast television. That's where people can actually pay you a salary to be a commentator. Maybe one day there's enough money in esports, there's enough infrastructure around esports where we can get, a mid-level full-time commentator gig without being like the literal best in your field and making a living. But now is not that time.
Truth bombs. These days, a little bit of a transition here. You said you've been consuming HOTS content since day one. That's been your primary HOTS thing.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of content are you consuming these days?
Around Heroes of the Storm, it's a lot of, I listen to Into the Nexus still every week. I listen to Q for Fun every week. Those are really the 2 podcasts that are left. So it's not like I can fill up my week with 5 podcasts anymore. But, I watch a lot of NGS stuff in terms of catching heroes. There's a few streamers I like to watch for heroes content. I watch Mockery, I watch Kyberries, Alicia Wins, like the list goes on in terms of people that I watch for individual play. But that's kind of the main sources that I get it from now. It used to be pretty much podcasts only with sometimes a stream, but now like I'm watching CCL in-house type stuff, I'm watching NGS stuff. So that I'm getting plenty of organized play as well as solo play from a few streamers that I tend to check out.
All right. Well, we are kind of coming up on our 2 hour mark here. I'm not sure what your time frame was looking like, but
There's a couple more questions. We can do that.
yeah, sure. So, one question that has kind of been recurring on the show is, as far as like taking, like learning things and applying them to other things, right?
Mhm.
You said you're married, work full time. Have there been any lessons that you've learned kind of in your journey in competitive HOTS that you've kind of been able to apply to any of your like real life relations or pursuits?
Um, really, just reinforcing the value of communication is kind of a recurring theme in life, and not just HOTS, but just anytime I tend to come across an issue, whether it's at work, whether it's personally, whether it's with the team. Looking back on it, it's like if I had just been clearer in communicating or in reaching out for communication, it probably wouldn't have turned into a large problem. It's something, rather than like my tendency when I'm upset about something or I'm depressed is to just sit there and not talk. And every time I do that, it never works out. Things get worse, things fester, the problem doesn't get solved. And you look back and it's like that's the thing about being in kind of a depressed state or a sad state is you feel like no one wants to listen to you. That's just it's a common thread amongst almost everyone I talk to who goes through down states. But you try to remind yourself when you're not stuck in those times that people want to hear from you and people can't help you unless you talk to them, unless you reach out. And people will do that if you do the same for them. If you listen to them, if you ask them, "Hey, how are you doing? Is there anything, you want to rant about, you want to chat about?" And keeping lines of communication open is incredibly important for pretty much everything you might want to do in a day. And it I know it's difficult to hear for people who'd rather, you've got anxiety, you've got, you're just not really interested in having every interaction in your day turn into a conversation. I totally, totally get that. But it's something you've got to learn how to do. And it's something I'm still learning how to do because I get in situations where it's like, gosh, if I had just talked, if I had just said how I felt about this thing, or if I just got this off my chest earlier, they wouldn't have assumed that something way worse was going on and caused a problem. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you have any questions like that you were prepared to answer coming into this that we didn't ask?
Not really. I mean, we went through a lot of stuff there. It was good to hear from people asking about casting, asking about the team. Um, yeah, I mean, we're fighting for our playoff spot. We've got a couple of matches left. I think we're gonna make eighth seed. And yeah, it's the main thing with the team is it will be a success if I can get the same squad into season 12. And that's going to be the hard part is keeping everyone together through the off season. Can I get enough games together, enough scrims together, playing in alternate leagues? And if everyone can still be friends and be willing to come back for season 12, that's the biggest goal that I have right now for the team.
Okay. What do you feel like is like? Do you feel like there's any like glaring roadblocks in the way of achieving that goal for you?
Oddly enough, I think the biggest possible roadblock is the vaccine rollout. This past year, everyone's had a lot more time on their hands to stay home and play video games than maybe they had in previous years. Like, normally in the summer, I'd be on softball teams. In the winter, I'd be playing in pool leagues. I'd be refereeing basketball. I'd have all my normal activities that I'd be doing. All of those just completely went off the table. And I had time for Heroes of the Storm. And I feel like that was the way for a lot of people. But the summer comes around and all the normal activities that they couldn't do last year are suddenly available. Maybe they have less time for HOTS. Maybe, the priorities change a bit. They want to spend more time doing other stuff. And that'll be up to me to decide, are we going to change the way the team Like, are we going to change the schedule to try to accommodate stuff? Are we going to pull back on our commitment? Are we going to find new people? And I think this summer is going to be a big time of people checking what their priorities are once the restrictions on their lives are a little bit taken off.
For sure, for sure. Are there any things that you're planning on doing once things have kind of calmed down? Any big projects?
Oh, I just want to go to a bar with my friends, man. I've been thinking about it for so long, to just be able to sit down and have a beer and not worry, and just not worry about my friends' safety and my family's safety. And it's going to be so nice when it happens, but we're not there yet. In terms of other stuff I'd want to get back to, like, I miss playing pool a lot. But the idea of just going into a pool hall with a bunch of people who probably aren't going to obey the rules of distancing and masking just didn't seem like a good idea. But, it's going to be tough because, like, Pool League is on, it's on Tuesdays. Am I going to do that instead of casting? I got to start making some choices here because I really like what I'm doing now. I'm gonna have to decide if I'm gonna go back to the stuff that I did before.
What a weird. That's just an interesting, powerful. Like, am I gonna go back? Man.
Yeah, it's like is that in the past now? Am I trying to reclaim what I did before, or do I continue on with what I'm doing now? Like, I'm gonna have to make the choice.
The main ski in chat is curious where your accent comes from.
I am Canadian, Eastern Canada, Ottawa area. No other accent other than that. Like, I didn't come from any other place. My parents are from the same area, so you're here. That's pretty much what you're hearing there.
Nice. Alrighty, well. We're coming up on our time here. Did you have any last questions, Stoic?
Just the people, they can find you at the Krushinator on Twitter and the Krushinator on Twitch, and the Krushinator on Instagram, the Krushinator on OnlyFans. Like, how far does the list go? Where can the people find you?
You can catch me Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram, all at the Krushinator. I'm on YouTube. I don't have the custom URL yet, but if you search the Krushinator, you can see all of the edited and spoiler-free casts that I put up there. Yeah, that's if you're interested in seeing it. One thing that I've noticed, especially if you're interested in seeing VODs of casts, trying to go onto Twitch and watch stuff, it hits you with like 2-minute frickin' ads every 20 minutes, and you're trying to skip around the VODs, and it's just awful. So if you're ever interested in seeing any of my casts, just go to YouTube. It's all edited down. It's all spoiler free, and there's no ads you're going to have to jump through every 20 seconds. So yeah, definitely if you're interested in catching my stuff and you didn't catch it live, YouTube is the place to go.
Also, the Crushy Nation. People can join that, right?
That's true. I do have a Discord. It's not super active, but if you came in there, maybe it would be more active. So I believe if you go to my Twitch and click on the Crush Discords link, it'll get you in there if you want to come and join me and talk about Heroes, talk about some other stuff.
We
Just
expect
be notified of all the content I put out.
We expect 10 more people to join that. All of you viewers are expected to go join and become part of the Crushy Nation. Do you have any shout-outs, Crush, before we let you go tonight?
Man, I mean, shout out to Valkymer and Valk's mom for getting all this started, getting me joining into the organization. It's been quite the journey since I came on board. Shout out to the NGS for putting their faith in me, being the head caster. It's been great so far. It's been great working with the board there, and working with everyone to just have a really, really fantastic league to work with. And man, I think I'd especially like to shout out just the Blizzard podcasting community in general, for being such a great window into any games that you don't happen to be playing at the moment, and just being welcoming, being there, and being a way for me to connect with the community in general while not being able to play games as much as I'd want. So I wouldn't be here without all of you. So thank you all very much.
Amazing shout outs there. The podcasts that are still going strong. Into the Nexus being the one that I think of first. It's amazing stuff. Well, people, you can find Crush on all those places at the Krushinator if you want to find him. He's playing for CCS 3 this week as they fight for their playoff spot. Good luck to them. Our next guest for next week, we're excited to announce that it will be Arcane of CCS 4, the dormant team. So more information on the status of CCS 4 and the future of CCS 4 next week. So we hope that everyone will see you back here. Bring your friends to find out more about the future of the CCS numerals. What are we forgetting to do before we sign off and let the people go to bed, Kryn? What have I forgotten?
Quick shout out. The next upcoming CCS event is going to be on the 16th of April, a development days. Make sure to come check it out if you're not signed up. Well, I don't know if signups are open yet, but make sure to sign up when they are open.
I did look out the sign-up sheet today. There is some things that you can put your name against, but there'll be more soon. Crush, thanks for coming on. I mean, Crush, amazing casting. If you haven't watched his cast, go check him out on Storm Division or his channel, whatever it might be. We're excited to see what the next step is. You know, for the Hots in me and for the gamer in me, I hope that softball and pool are put to the wayside and Herbs and Rocket League take their place. But if not, we've got some amazing stuff coming out of you. So Crush, thank you for coming on. Corinne, thanks for being a great guest. Chat, we thank you for being here, dropping some great questions and being a part of the community. This has been the Chat Show. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.